I'm gonna let Shannon focus on the fire, so I'll be narrating what happens. But this will all become a lot more clear as we see it unfold. But as they're gonna start with this slow backing fire, and it's gonna create a broader, wider safe space in addition to our current fire break. So it's gonna continue to get wider and wider. And you'll see they'll probably do a few head fires, which will be upwind, and they'll burn into the already existing backing fire. This is a drip torch. Somebody asked about what goes in these drip torches. So it looks like he's getting started, getting some fuel on there. You want a mix of diesel and gasoline in your drip torch. People have different ratios. Generally, it's about 75% diesel and 25% gas. The greater the diesel, the slower the burn. The greater the gas, the faster and flashier the burn will go. So you see the wind is moving, blowing that fire into our existing fire break. And it's gonna hit that mud, and it's gonna go out. If it hits some of this grass here in the fire break, we'll extinguish it as it comes out.
Luke, has this field been burned before, and if so, how long on a rotation is that?
The question is, has this been burned before? And not in recent memory, not in the last 10 or 15 years. This was soybean fields a year ago. It's been fallow all last year. And that's Chase Morgan with the Nature Conservancy running the drip torch. He is the leader of the Prescribed Fire Council, if you guys remember his talk. This is a flapper that Gilbert has here. And this is a nice way to also put out small fires that might escape. It reduces the oxygen and prevents the oxygen from getting onto that fire.
When you use these, a lot of times you just take them and you can put it over and rub the fire, or something you do hit them like that.
So you can rub the fire, kind of wipe it over the fuel, or you can pat it out. You see this small area of a little bit of escape here on the corner, kind of burning in here. He's going to demonstrate. You can just almost wipe it out and smack it out like that. Some other hand tools that are useful. We had all these out in the barn. You can take a look at them. Depending on where you're burning, we have rakes, standard leaf rakes. If you're in a forested environment, you can just rake fire breaks. We have leaf blowers. Leaf blowers are a very popular way to create a fire break, especially in a pine savanna area where you have pine needles on the ground. You just blow all those leaves 10 feet across and create a nice wide fire break that way. When you create a burn plan, you'll pull up a map and look and see what wind directions will be safe for smoke. Smoke management is one of the biggest aspects to be considering with prescribed fire. It can go over roadways. If it's in that case, it could cause accidents. We just had oftentimes the question of liability comes up. And we just had a lawyer do a review of Maryland liability law, and it appears that Maryland is a simple negligence state. So if you follow the standard for negligence is usually considered by a jury of people to say, would a reasonable person do this? And part of what goes into that is considerations of, did you follow your burn plan? So having an approved burn plan from the state helps to show, and you followed all the prescriptions inside that, it shows this is what a reasonable person would have done. So having these things in place helps to protect you from liability issues. When we get back to the barn, I've got a talk prepared about why this is important for wildlife. And I don't want to take all the thunder away from my talk, but I'll basically do it right now. One of the big things about it is it creates diversity in the landscape. Fancy academic word is heterogeneity. Just makes me sound smart if I say that. But it's creating a variety of different structures on the landscape. And how does that happen? Well, you can see some areas just aren't burning. Some areas are burning hotter than others. Sometimes that can be driven by wind, the fuel, myriad numbers of factors could go into what would lead to something burning hotter or cooler. And because of that diversity, we're going to have a variety of different intensities that go across this. Certain plants are going to respond differently to more intense fires and less intense fires. Areas that don't burn at all are going to be as if they were not burned. So you have these little patches of wet areas or green areas. Some saplings will not get burned. Some will get burned hotter. Yeah.
What do you do if the saplings don't burn, and are you trying to get the seed bank to come through?
Yeah, the question is, what happens if our saplings don't burn? I'll tell you, a lot of these saplings in here, they're in there. They're hard to see right now, but we have a lot of sweet gums in there. Even if we do burn them, they will come back. They're very tenacious saplings. It sets them back to some extent. Fall fires tend to do a harder number on them if you can burn in the late season, September, October. That basically interrupts their ability to put carbohydrates into their rootstock before they go dormant. So it's a harder push on them if you burn them in the fall. Your other question was
Seed bank.
the seed bank. So the ash releases small amounts of nutrients back into the soil. It adds slight changes to pH, and it reduces the duff, the thatch that is sitting on top of the ground. That gets sunlight right to the soil, and seeds that are right on the soil. Certain seeds will germinate better if they have full sunlight versus if they're covered with a layer of 6 inches, a foot of thatch. So that's another aspect of the diversity where you have certain seeds and plants are going to respond better to having a cleared out overstory, if you will. An overstory of grassland's gone, and they'll be able to get a brand new flush. So you have a few interacting factors of fertilization from the ash, different nutrients coming into the ground and becoming more bioavailable at the surface, and sunlight being able to hit the soil. What comes back will depend upon what's the temperature, what's the rainfall regimen coming down. Certain plants, a lot of things are going to germinate. Some things might do better, and I couldn't give you these off the top of my head, but I'm going to give you examples of why you could get a lot of variation. Some plants might be more drought tolerant. So they could come up, if you get a short rain and it's enough to germinate, they can survive. Other plants might need more regular rainfall to survive. So if you have a drought, certain types of plants will do okay, others will die out. If you have a really wet time, certain plants will do better than others that prefer the dry stuff. So you can get a lot of, again, heterogeneity and diversity coming back. So on the end, I'll go from the top to the bottom. The wick is at the tip right here. That has a kind of a rope filament in it. It gets soaked with fuel. Right below that right here, there's actually a nozzle, so fuel actually jets out that when you tip it forward. You can see it, and it soaks the wick first, and then after this wick fills up, it then drips fuel off of that. So once you get that lit, it stays lit. You don't have to keep pulling out a lighter and restarting things. So this tube right here is a way to kind of prevent the fuel from going too fast. There's a bleeder here. This can control your fuel, how fast your fuel comes out. It's like on those water containers on your countertop, you have to pop a hole in it. That's the hole that allows air to come into the container. So the more open, the faster the fuel comes out. Anything else to go over on this? You want the, so for storage, they're really unique things. Is it's a gasket. You can flip that thing upside down and goes inside there, and then you screw your cap back on top. There's a plug for storage, and you just put it like that and you can store it that way. Is there a time limit that you keep your fuel for? Does it get old?
It does. So diesel fuel.
I don't know if you want to answer me here.
Yeah, your drip torch mix can get old. It doesn't mean you can't use it, and in fact, a lot of it sits around when we're not in prescribed fire season. But what it can result in is the way that the torch lights the fire. It can just behave really differently. Mainly it's a condensation that happens while it's sitting. You get a little bit of water. It'll just affect how it works. So you've had mix sitting in a torch for a long time. You get out on the fire line to use it for the first time. If it starts spitting fuel out or behaving funny, the best thing to do is just put that torch away and get a torch with some fresh fuel. But the easiest way to get rid of old fuel is to use it on the fire line. So just make sure that you're trying to be as efficient as possible with your mix. So don't fill the torches up if you don't need it to be filled, stuff like that.
You want to demonstrate how you light it?
Yeah, sure. So the safest way to do it is to put fuel on the ground and then use your lighter to light that fuel.
The fuel on the ground first, and then he uses a lighter. So he's going to pour a little fuel on the ground. He's going to use a lighter to light that spot. And then he's going to take his drip torch and light his drip torch. And why is that safer, Chase?
So that's just safer because it gives you a little bit more separation. So see, if I was, number one, today it's very windy. So it might be trouble, I'd have trouble lighting my lighter and getting this to ignite, right? Also now I have lit fuel kind of up in the air, a little bit closer to my body. It's just a little bit easier to put it on the ground. You saw how it flared up pretty quickly. Just light that and then grab your fire from here on the ground. And it's just generally good practice, unless you're actively lighting, you want your torch to be out. So that way I don't accidentally drop some drip torch fuel in my fire line, or even worse, outside of the burn unit.
It's real easy to be walking around and accidentally let that drip torch tilt down and you're dropping fuel on the ground. So always be cognizant of where your fuel is. You could give a chance.
Give us a little briefing to the folks that are going to be doing some igniting before we get started.
Yeah, for those who want to do igniting, Chase will do a little briefing here.
So you want to make sure that you're holding the drip torch out and away from your body. We don't want any of that mix to get onto your clothing. And then also you need to be keeping your eyes on the fire, even looking behind you just to see what it's doing. Again, we don't want to be standing in any direct flame. And that's kind of the biggest concern here is any active flame. So everyone's wearing a natural fiber clothing, which is, resistant to catching. It's better than polyester, but just be aware the equipment that we're wearing is fire retardant, and it's meant for this type of work. So we just want to really be careful to make sure we don't get any, we don't want to mess up your jeans or your pants, and we certainly don't want anyone to get hurt. So
Try to ignite from the fire break if possible.
So safety briefing over about igniting.
You want to hold it?
Doesn't matter to me.
Hold it if you want.
Yeah, so the way we ignite this, we want to ignite it as close to our control line as possible, right? So when we're running our drip torch, we only want to be just putting the fuel right next to our fire line. And then what it's going to do is it's going to burn out to this exposed soil. It puts itself out, and then it's going to be backing into our unit. So that's what we want to see here. What we're doing right now is we're putting in our black line. So this is our control line that's downwind. So we want to have a lot of burnt fuel or black before we start bringing fire up the edges of the burn unit and burning out the rest of the unit. So just again, folks, when we have the torch in hand, fire inside the unit and out and away from your body. So you probably even, I think right there, the mix just dropped on the ground and started a little spot right next to me. So just always being aware, always looking down, and always looking to see what our fire is doing. So it's following, and look, you can see here my torch is kind of spitting fuel out. And that happens pretty often when there's too much gas mixed in. And you can see the wind is doing a lot of the work for us right now. So one of the things you want to do is, you know, we're seeing the fire kind of move with the wind. I want to be able to get out ahead of that. That way, if we need to kind of control it, we can. Right down along the edge here. And if you want to just bring it directly to where I'm standing.
And which side of the fuel should he be going from?
So typically you'd want to be working, and at this point in the burn, it's not quite as important, but typically you want to be operating either from the black or from your fire line. And that's because, you know, at the moment you're currently standing in the fuels you're planning to burn, right? So you just want to be a little bit more heads up. Sometimes it can be helpful to do it in this direction because you're not standing in smoke. Although our wind seems to be kind of spinning around a little bit at the moment. Fire from right here and just kind of draw a little half moon right over here to this. So one of the things that I'm noticing is there's not a lot of fuel coming out of the torch. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this air vent a little bit more and try to get more airflow and see if it pours better. So hold it down, there we go. See how now we have like an actual stream coming out? And then with the wind, what's happening is the wind is blowing the fire on the wick away from the torch, which sometimes that drip torch mix, it comes out of the torch past the wick and never gets lit. All right. Excellent. So see how it's putting itself out here along the fire line, and then it's just slowly kind of eating its way into this fuel on the backside here. So we got, oh, and see that's, so when when it's lit like that, if we're like ever kind of out and standing, what you want to do is you just grab it and smother it. So one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to blow on it because it could just flare up.
Yeah,
In the torch, and that's why you just always want to be aware of your surroundings. You know, it's good to be watching what the fire's doing, but it's easy to get distracted by just staring at the flames. You need to be looking around you all the time. Yeah, so what happens is it's probably overfilled a little bit and it gets pressurized in there. So the fuel just will kind of drip. You'll see little air bubbles. So that's again, like you want to keep it away from your body. You want to make sure you're not dripping it all over yourself.
Okay, how does this work again?
Yep, so if you want to come up here with me. So what we're going to do is you're just going to tip the tip of this right down into that flame and it'll light the wick up for you. Okay. And then you just want to hold it out, walking from here on our fire line, you just kind of want to slowly drip the fuel right on this edge. Yep. So it's hard to see because the wind's blowing it, but you've got some flame there. See how when it pours out? Yeah. So now you just kind of do that and you want to keep moving because it'll be a little hot, you know, with the flame behind you. And you know, it's just, footing isn't great. Excellent. And you get that little flush of that radiant heat, you know, right when everything starts to light up. Yeah. So that's what's good about kind of, once you start moving and lighting, you want to kind of stay moving steadily. Because one, you get away from the heat, and two, you get away from the smoke. Yeah. All right, and we'll hold up about right there. And then, so one of the things when we're not lighting we want to do is we want to put this out, and the best way to do that is just to smother it.
It's conserved fuel, or?
So one, it's conserved fuel, yes, and we don't want it to drip on us, and we don't want to accidentally, you know, start a fire in the fire line. That's a good way. So now our wind is picked up, and you'll see the fire here is getting a little bit more active, is what we call that. But you know, you get these little gusts of wind, but our wind direction is staying pretty consistent. Yeah. So you can see, look at the smoke, the way it's burning, like it's kind of going right at this corner. Yeah. And that's what we want to do. We just kind of want to walk it up these edges and let it burn into itself. And this is, you know, good backing fire here. So, you know, the big, huge flames look really cool. They're not always the most effective in doing what you'd like to do. So we got a lot of this green grass is cool season grasses. This real slow burn like this puts a lot more what's called resident heat on this grass. We're more likely to kill it by burning it slow. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking our fire right from our corner directly to that corner.
Okay.
So the same thing like here, we just want to pick up our fire right here from where it's lit, and then once we start lighting, we're just going to walk in a nice steady pace directly towards the corner of that. There we go. Yep, that's perfect.